Hey everybody, welcome back to Chipstock Investor. After a ugly start to the semiconductor earnings season, thanks to ASML's downbeat outlook for 2025, the world's largest chip maker, Taiwan Semiconductor, or TSM, ticker symbol TSM, painted a very different picture for investors. The stock has now nearly doubled so far in 2024, and 2025 could be another strong year for the contract chip fab. We're not going to get into all of the nitty-gritty details on the Q3 financials. They were as expected, which was good, thanks to TSMC's providing its usual monthly revenue reports. So there was nothing that was unexpected in the financials. Instead, we're going to focus on the highlights that we thought are worthy of mentioning from the Q3 update and why this could be a great bet on the chip industry overall right now. In fact, it was one of our picks for 2024.
Yeah, that was back in late December, early January, and ultimately we're not changing that view on this. So let's go through a couple of these key points that we're going to talk about today. First, ASML and the Fab Five. Obviously, it might take a hit from lower TSMC spending in 2025. A little bit of caution perhaps necessary there on the Fab Five. However, TSMC, the best broad-based bet on the semiconductor market right now, we think it might be. We'll explain.
And then we'll finish on a couple of points for TSMC international expansion outside of Taiwan. That takes time and a lot of money. Where is TSMC in that process? And then we'll just briefly discuss the valuation and the current chip end market cycle. This video today is sponsored by public.com. Time could be running out to lock in a historic yield at public.com, but you can lock in a 6% or higher yield with a bond account.
So here's the thing. You probably know by now the Federal Reserve just announced that big rate cut in September. There's probably more interest rate cuts coming, perhaps a bit more gradually in the coming months, but still probably some rate cuts. That's good news. If you need debt, if you need to take out debt, it might pay to wait. But if you're looking to invest in a fixed interest rate like, let's say, a bond, now is probably the time to act, sooner than later.
It only takes a couple of minutes to sign up at public.com, and once you lock in your yield, you can earn regular interest payments even as rates decline. Lock in a 6% or higher yield with a bond account at public.com/CSI. But hurry, your rate is not locked in until you invest. Check it out in our description below.
Okay, so if you haven't caught it yet, we did do the update on ASML a few days ago. And as we explained, there was no real shocking revelation in what they had to say. In fact, we kind of knew this was taking place all along, that maybe some of ASML's leading edge EUV machines, maybe the demand was not as strong as the market was hoping for. And this is one reason why. This is all the way back in Q1 2024. TSMC's CFO, Wendell Wang, said that they've been converting some of the existing equipment they already have on hand from 5 nanometer tools, that's the previous leading edge manufacturing process TSMC had, to 3 nanometer capacity. That's 3 nanometer now, the leading edge, most advanced chip making processes TSMC offers its customers. So as we explained with ASML, some of the headwind that they're now suddenly experiencing for 2025 is simply its fab customers trying to get more out of the equipment that they already have. For ASML, that's a good thing for service revenue because they do realize some revenue when TSMC moves equipment around the fab, but maybe not selling as much new equipment. And this goes for the rest of the Fab Five companies as well, which we'll be reporting in the coming weeks.
This has freed up some cash to make investments in other areas, which we'll circle back to later in the episode. But as of right now, the 3 nanometer process is the absolute best in the business. And as the new growth cycle starts for the semi industry, everyone continues to line up to work with TSMC. This is even the case with accelerated computing market, which has been going pretty strong for about 2 years now.
Yeah, and at the beginning of this year, some investors scoffed at TSMC management's claim that AI and accelerated computing products, sales would grow at about a 50% compound annual growth rate on average through 2027. That doesn't look like such a silly claim anymore, right at the moment. I mean, at some point we need to expect that's going to slow down below 50%. That's why it's an average, 50% CAGR average. But yeah, NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom continue to want to work with TSMC on this. And this is lumped into HPC, or high performance compute, that you see on this slide. You can see where that HPC revenue for TSMC was just 5 years ago, Q3 2019, just shy of 30% of revenue. Now it's well over half. Yeah, companies like NVIDIA and AMD, they value TSMC's 3 nanometer manufacturing process for the actual wafer development. But there is more to the story, though. TSMC's expertise in chip packaging is fantastic. And as you probably know by now, accelerated computing isn't just about the individual chips. It's about being able to package them into a larger computing system before getting shipped off to the data center. No one is catching TSMC anytime soon on the capabilities involved with packaging these accelerated compute chips into whole data center systems. It's just top notch.
So after ASML's report and that downbeat guidance for 2025, we're getting a lot of questions about the companies in the Fab Five, all the equipment suppliers to TSMC. Are they in trouble? We don't think so. As many of our viewers know, we've been nibbling on Lam Research throughout this year, and also ASML may be a better deal now than it was certainly earlier this year, but we still need to have some caution with these stocks. Let's talk about why.
Yeah, to round out point 2, though, is TSMC now the best broad-based bet in the semiconductor market? Yeah, we think it very well could be. We still like the equipment makers an awful lot, though. Maybe a little bit of caution needed right at the moment, but let's see what everybody else says, and then combine that with ASML's guidance for 2025 before we get too pessimistic or overly optimistic, either direction. So stay tuned for more updates on those. Okay, let's talk for a brief moment, Casey, about where we're at in the various end market cycles for semiconductors.
Of course, AI infrastructure, new market in max growth mode, but all those other end markets, consumer, cloud and enterprise, and even auto and industrial, are all playing catch up and are starting the beginning of a new growth cycle. Case in point, check out the Q4 guidance for Taiwan Semiconductor. Management was pretty optimistic about end markets improving and joining the accelerated computing growth cycle. They said that the revenue expected to be at least an 11% quarter over quarter revenue increase. And that operating profit margin, you can see that down there in the bottom, between 46.5 and 48.5%. That's flat quarter over quarter operating margin, and that could be because of the ramp up of NVIDIA's new Blackwell system.
Either way, though, perhaps NVIDIA's Blackwell system a little bit of a short-term headwind to TSMC's profitability as they ramp that up. But all of the other end markets, smartphone and consumer electronics, automotive finally bottoming out, IoT, all of that finally starting to recover. And that's all fantastic news for TSMC's already very, very good profit margins.
Let's now focus on point number 3, international expansion. Outside of Taiwan, TSMC has been working on this, and it takes a ton of time and a lot of money. And this is one of the risks for TSMC. The media is certainly pumping the risk of Taiwan getting invaded, and there has been a change in government, a new president in Taiwan, which could amplify the risk. So to be completely honest, this may make this stock a no-go for you, and that's completely fine.
Yeah, it is. We understand. Our view is that if Taiwan were to get invaded, probably the last thing you need to worry about is having a few shares of TSMC in your portfolio. The world is going to be in some pretty big trouble should that happen. But that's maybe a different topic for a different time. What we do know, though, is TSMC is working on expanding outside of Taiwan. Notice also, in addition to the ongoing construction in Arizona, the fabs down there, they just broke ground on the new fab in Dresden, Germany. That'll be TSMC's first presence on the European continent. They also made that Innolux display panel factory acquisition in the third quarter as well. Glass panel display packaging coming soon in the next 3 years, possibly. Check out the video here in the video or in the link below to get some more details on what that's about. But TSMC taking some of that cash that they're saving, perhaps on purchasing less ASML lithography equipment, and dumping it into things like more advanced packaging technology, which is what top customers want right now. Companies like NVIDIA and AMD really value continuous innovation in packaging at the moment. So good stuff happening there for TSMC. But again, the point is, folks, TSMC's long-term guidance provided a couple of years ago on expansion outside of Taiwan is making good, solid progress. But as Casey said, it just takes time. These fabs are expensive, tens of billions of dollars spent to build these and fill them up with equipment. You don't just put up a new fab and start rolling chips off the manufacturing line overnight.
Okay, let's move to our final point number 4 on the valuation for Taiwan Semiconductor. We have 1-year forward PE and price to free cash flow. It's still very reasonable, given most of the semi market returning to growth, plus NVIDIA, of course, killing it, and TSMC shelling out a ton of cash for expansion and chip packaging tech. The valuation is still very reasonable for where we are in the cycle.
Now, that's, of course, our opinion. If you're looking for some sort of screaming value on TSMC shares, well, that would have been when pretty much everything else was a screaming value in October of 2022. That ship sailed 2 years ago now. There's no going back. But again, just our opinion for where we're at in this cycle. Accelerated computing still very much in max growth mode. Blackwell chips from NVIDIA are coming. New chips from AMD are coming. TSMC will benefit from that. Plus everything else in the end market, smartphones, PCs, automotive, IoT, so on and so forth, industrial and enterprise computing. All of that will benefit TSMC. These valuations look okay if you're looking for a broad-based chip bet for the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years. So just to recap our 4 key takeaways from TSMC's earnings, let's see what the other 4 of the Fab Five say in the coming weeks during earnings report. ASML's outlook for 2025 was, actually still quite good, implying growth for ASML's business. Maybe just not as much growth as what we had hoped for before, but let's see what Applied and Lam and the others say. So does that make TSMC the best broad-based bet right now at the moment on the whole semiconductor industry? We think it looks pretty good.
And then finally, international expansion outside of Taiwan is making progress, but it's taking a lot of time and a lot of money for TSMC. So that is something we'll just have to be patient on. And for valuation, we still feel like TSMC is pretty reasonably priced considering all of the options out there. And it was one of our top picks for 2024 and still is if it's something you'd like in your portfolio.
Yeah, be cautious out there, folks. Don't go blowing massive chunks of your portfolio on any single stock. Use common sense and reasoning. We're not gambling here. So I guess maybe that would just be a final point, just based off of some of the comments we've been seeing as of late. This is, if you're a long-term investor like we are, remember this is not a sprint. This is a very, very, very long-term endurance race.
It's an ultra marathon.
Ultra. All right.
Thanks everybody for watching this episode of Chip Stock Investor. Make sure you sub to the channel, and if you want a little more interactivity with Nick and I, you can get that over on our Discord server. Join the Semiconductor Insider membership for just $5 a month. Gets you access to all of our show notes, live Q&As, and discussion on all things semiconductors and just about anything investing that you want to talk about, and sometimes about our puppy, Rhea. See you all again soon at Chip Stock Investor.